I'm very sorry about that, both to you and to those who are listening remotely. For some reason, we just lost all internet connectivity. I'm glad to say we're now restored, just as magically as we disappeared. I hope it doesn't happen again, but thank you for your patience. Ms. Scott.
Just before we were cut off, you were mentioning a document which I have the reference for now, so we can put that up on screen so that those that are listening can see it. It's EILN 5013_106. So this is an email dated the 26th of November from Peter Stevens to a number of trustees, including yourself. And if we look at the fourth paragraph down, the attached spreadsheet deals with all 19 who are receiving reg pay. And then if we carry on down 2 paragraphs, we've been advised by Gillian Fletcher, the lawyer who addressed the MFT away day, that both receipt of IS and earning both receipt of IS and earning a minimum wage are reasonable indicators of the financial need, which it is our duty to ensure is what we are meeting. In other words, on strict legal grounds, there is only one recipient of reg pay of whose financial need we not have evidence.
The do is missing, isn't it?
Yes, we do not have evidence. She is the lady who has not hitherto appeared to be needy. So I am proposing that we simplify our structure and break away from the MFT formula by putting everyone on the same basic rate at which we add supplements if they receive DLA and if they have families. We set the new rates at roughly 25% above the current level for anybody who is not, as a matter of the preceding paragraph, being reclassified, who would get a higher uplift. And then he goes on to discuss what that means for individual cases, which I don't think we need to look at. So from November 2006, it's your understanding, is it your recollection that everybody was on the same rates, but with uplift depending on their circumstances?
Can I just make sure that when this is put out there, there is a redaction to the name which appears further on down the page?
Yes.
And can I remind those who are watching that this document is subject to a restriction order which I made earlier. Thank you.
So that was the position from November 2006, was it?
Yes. I mean, he ends up by saying, "I hope you will agree or get back to me." And I haven't seen what comes after that, but my recollection of what was going on after that is that we went through with what we're saying now. I couldn't swear that it was 25%, but I can't imagine that we would have changed it.
So the principle was that if you were infected or if you were a dependent, you were eligible for the same level of payments.
Yes.
And then can I move on now to the position for reg pay post Archer, post the Archer report. So in your witness statement, and we can see this reflected in the documents, you say that the aim of the trust was to ensure that income for a single person was at £18,000 per annum, and for someone living with a partner, it was £30,000 per annum. Is that right?
Yes, that was something that we decided in February 2010 that there should be minimum standards which we would expect people to have in terms of housing and transport, financial security, basically all those sort of major areas of expenditure. And as well as that, we would agree the minimum level of income, as you've just said. So that meant that after Archer, we still had some people on reg pay because Archer wasn't up there.
And again, the same question, those minimum levels of income applied equally, did it, to those that were infected and their needy relatives?
Yes.
May I just ask whether that was the income per infected person, or per registrant, or the household income?
I don't know is the answer, but I know that when we assessed it, we took into account income that they would have been getting from benefits and other sources. But I think it would have been the single person. I think it would have been the household person if they were with somebody. But the truth, actually, I don't know is the answer.
Thank you.
So I can't answer that.
So I'm just there is a documentary reference, but I don't think that takes it any further.
Well, it looks as though household income must be taken into account to justify the difference between a single person and a person with a partner, because the latter says nothing about the partner's income.
Yeah, but I think you would be able to tell, because we made these judgments looking at the figures that Susan Daniels put together for us from her contacts with the registrants, and it would say on those figures, which I think are somewhere in another document, what was included in the income, so it would be clear there.
It might help if we look at this document, EILN 5012_018. So this is a minute of a board meeting on the 24th of February 2010, and we can see that you are attending, and as is Ms Daniels. And if we turn over to the second page of that minute, and we see the first full paragraph, Mr Spellman observed the post-Archer settlement had provided an opportunity to identify registrants' needs with greater precision, and then Mr Mishcon added these needs could be of a capital nature, for example, relating to housing improvements, as well as those covered by income. It was agreed that the Trust should develop some minimum standards in key areas such as housing, transport, financial security and holidays, and respite, called standard items, which it would be reasonable to try to provide to all registrants. Mr Spellman further proposed that the Trust should have a guideline for a minimum level of income that registrants should have, taking into account whether they were single, lived with a partner, had children, and so on. Discussion of particular registrants' circumstances led to the preliminary conclusions that these guidelines should be annual incomes of £18,000 for a single person, £30,000 for somebody living with a partner. And then if we look down the page there to 5072, we can see what they're doing, what the board appear to be doing here is looking at income and benchmark level, but at 5072 they say although household income was above the benchmark level, and so on. So it looks there that it was household income that was being considered. Do you think that's right?
I think that probably is right, yeah.
And
but with all these cases, there was...
Sorry, 5089 says the couple's income.
Yeah.
So that looks like the same approach.
Yeah.
Can I ask you just one more point on the reg pay? Can we go to document AHOH 5017? This is a minute of a meeting from 17th of February 94. And if we go over to page 4 of that minute, and it's under payments, under C, payments to dependents, subject of regular payments to dependents of deceased persons was discussed, and the historic causes and effects of such payments being made by the Macfarlane Trust were reviewed. It was agreed that the Macfarlane Trust system might be different if restarted at present from first principles, and that it was not necessarily a good pattern to follow, at least until the Eileen Trust developed further experience on its own. It was, however, unanimously agreed that the Trust should help through the period of bereavement and readjustment. On this basis, it was determined that on the death of I'm sorry, this is the wrong reference for the question I was going to ask you, although I do want to take you to this reference later. So see if I can find it in this document, and if not, I'll just go on to the next question. I can't find it in this document. So let me ask you this question then. So on this basis, it was determined that on the death of any person registered with the trust or of an infected intimate, a payment of £1,000 would be offered to the dependent or care of the person deceased, and in the case of dependents, any regular payment made would be continued for 6 months at the same rate. Any further support beyond this period would be examined on a case-by-case basis. So this is not. This is a question in relation to the dependents, the non-infected community. We've seen already from the 1995 annual report that many of them, or some of them, were receiving regular payments. This, in the early days, appears to be, was it the policy that on the death of the infected person, payments would continue at the same level for 6 months, and there would be a lump sum of £1,000, and then it would be on a case-by-case basis as to whether or not regular payment would continue. Is that how you recall the early policy?
Yes, right at the beginning. But I think quite soon we started being more flexible, and we had widows coming in and being paid, giving reg pay for much longer than 6 months. Not all of them, but on a case-by-case basis.
Well, this policy, isn't this policy suggesting that the payments that the infected registrant received continued for 6 months for everybody after their death, and then there was then the trust would consider on a case-by-case basis whether ongoing regular payments should be made to the dependents.
That's
the relatives,
right.
Yes. And if I can just take you to another document, then in 1998, EILN 606_079. This is a trust meeting minute from 16th of October 1998. And again, we can see you in attendance. If we go over to page 4, please, of that report, and it's 98.21B status report, widows and widowers. A status report on all widows and widowers were considered by trustees. The report indicated that all widows with dependent children and 4 widowers with dependent children are in receipt of...
Up. Sorry, Katie, I missed all of that last time, Scott. I missed all of that last bit you said.
Oh, sorry, right. So status report, widows and widowers. A status report on all widows and widowers was considered by trustees. The report indicated that all widows with dependent children and 4 widowers with dependent children were in receipt of regular monthly payments from the trust. However, 2 widowers with dependent children were not currently receiving regular payments. For the sake of fairness and consistency, it was possible that these widowers should also receive support. So just pausing there, is it your recollection that the majority of widows and widowers with dependent children were in receipt of reg pay throughout the time of the trust?
Yes, it is. What's the date of this document?
This is
October 1998.
Yes, October 98.
Yes, because in 96 we approved reg pays to 7 dependents, some of which were widows, and we approved reg pay, or consideration of reg pay for 3 widowers. So that is definitely my recollection.
And then moving on down that paragraph, the chairman said regular payments were being considered as part of the McFarlane Trust strategic review. These payments were not given to jack up a state system that was inadequate. And then this. It was also suggested that there had been an initial decision not to continue to support widowers if they remarried. Staff were asked to look into the marital status of the 2 widowers referred to. Do you recall the initial decision being made about the impact of remarriage on regular payments?
No, I don't. No, and it seems surprising.
And do you recall whether, in fact, the Eileen Trust took into account remarriage when deciding whether or not to provide regular ongoing payments to widows or widowers?
I don't recall.
I'm now going to ask you some questions about the position of children. EILN 606_128. I'm going to take you to two documents, and then I'll ask you questions about the position for children. So this is the first one. This is the minute of the meeting on the 30th of January 98. We can see you in attendance, and if we turn over to page 2 of that document, at the top, dependent children and young people. The Secretary also reported concerns at a growing number of dependent orphan children and young people, pointing out that due to adolescent trauma, some dependents were still in need of assistance from the Trust when they were beyond what might normally be regarded as the age of independence. Following discussion, it was agreed that flexibility should be applied when considering future support for such youngsters. The social worker was asked to review a number of cases, and if further support was required, convene a mini ALOC similar to those used in Macfarlane Trust. And then can I also just turn up EILN 5016_056. Which is the annual report from 1998, 31st of March 98. Can we turn to page 3 of that report? And it's about the paragraph below, sadly. There are 13 children halfway down that page. There are 13 children dependent on the Trust or Trust registrants for financial assistance, a number who have been badly traumatised by the death of one or both parents from HIV-related illness. Trustees have agreed that where children's education has been interrupted by trauma, support from the Trust may continue until completion of further education, though this may be delayed beyond the normal expected age of graduation. So do we understand from these documents that the Trust policy was for a child who had lost either one or both of their parents, they could be provided with support beyond the usual age of graduation, if that was appropriate?
Yes, exactly.
And did the Trust, in fact, without mentioning any names or any specific cases, can you recall whether the Trust did, in fact, provide such ongoing support for for children?
I definitely can, and we definitely did.
Do you recall whether the Eileen Trust, ever provided any loans to any of its registrants?
I don't remember it, but I think I've seen in some of the minutes that there were one or two loans.
So you don't have any recollection of the circumstances in which those were made?
No, I don't.
The Trust also, as well as providing regular payments, also provided provided payments on application for single grants. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you recall how the Trust assessed those applications?
Always, and right from the beginning, on a case-by-case basis, because that was how we felt it was the most effective way to do it.
And what was the criteria that the Trust applied in assessing whether or not the grant should be made or not?
Well, I suppose initially it was financial need, but that was always the case. And then it was that it was relevant to health, which could be interpreted obviously in several ways. So we gave grants for what's initially called respite breaks, but became holiday breaks because we deemed that as something that was very necessary. But as I say, it was always on a case-by-case basis.
And do you recall whether applicants were required to fill out sort of income and expenditure forms so that the trust could assess what the level of disposable income was?
I don't know whether they were at the beginning. I certainly don't remember us looking at them in the early days. As time went on, and when Susan Daniels was on board, and she would know all that kind of information because she had found it out, really in order to be able to help sometimes get rid of debt or manage their finances. So we did know it, but I don't think it massively came into our decision-making process because by definition they needed the money. It was, I suppose, we spent more time thinking about whether they needed whatever it was or whether it was right for us to give whatever it was that they were asking for.
Rather than whether or not they could show financial show financial need.
Yes, I mean, I think there were probably the odd occasion where we'd say we pay a contribution towards X.
So I'm going to come on to looking at the application process itself, and I note the time. I wonder if now is a good time for a break.
Well, yes, we'll take a break now, if that would be all right, until 20 to 12. We've already had one impromptu break, but that was impromptu. This now can allow people at home or yourself to have a bit of refreshment mid-morning and be back at 20 to 12.